I sighed. It was a setback, but only a setback. As galling as it was, I wasn't going to let it drag me down. Not back to the mattress. All right, get us out of here, Lacuna. Maybe you and Glory can teleport up and disable the lightning rods, or... There was a resounding creaking sound, and I got ready to blast again. All of a sudden, a dozen thick branches curled around two trunks. The trees sounded like they were screaming as the branches twisted them apart and pulled the trunks wide with a resounding wooden crunch. Then another pair was ripped apart. Then another. A path, as straight as an arrow, led directly towards the building. P-21 looked at the stunned Glory. Pretty smart cat. Scotch gulped. Well, I'm not afraid. Let's go, the filly said as she pointed down the path that had opened up. After you? She asked Rampage. Buck. Rampage clucked as she trot ahead. Of course, you know this is a trap, Glory asked, looking over at me as we walked along after the striped reaper. Of course, it wouldn't be Hoofington otherwise, I answered, looking through the gaps between the trunks. I saw great trees that seemed to bear apples and oranges and other fruits, but sprawled beneath them were just more and more jumbled bones. It was another Silver Star Sporting Supplies, just a more vicious version. The trees were closing the path behind us, with the grinding creaks and groans of tortured wood. And then the foliage ended abruptly, the transition as sharp as if it were simply an invisible line. Spread out before us was a huge lawn of blue-green grass. It was covered with strange train-like engines and wagons, and heaps of barrels loomed with oozing incrustations, slowly dripping their congealed contents like colorful pus. Most bizarre of all were the statues. One showed three foals frolicking. Another was a mare looking impressive, rearing with a flag clenched in her forehooves. There were dozens of them scattered across the strange grass. A few had tumbled over, and others were covered in creeping blue vines, but most of them were just there. Scotch leaped from my back and onto Lacuna, and stared at one of the strange engines. It's gonna eat me. It's gonna gobble me up. I had to admit, with its rusted grille and the two domed lamps beside the massive drum on the front, I half thought it was going to eat me. I'll keep you safe, Scotch, Lacuna promised softly, lifting her wings to shield the filly from the sight. We started to walk between the vine-covered husks, and I saw the blue vines start to creep. My mane started to do the freakiest things as the plants rasped faintly against the hulls of the machines. I'd already seen trees rip a path in front of me, though, so this shouldn't have been that frightening. In comparison, Rampage scowled at the vines. Ha! This can't be. Then her eyes popped open wide. No way. We're nowhere near the Everfree Forest. Can't be what? I asked as I saw her pupils constrict in horror. Run! She screamed. Killing joke! As if waiting for just that, the ground around us exploded with snaky blue vines. They slithered out of every hole, seeming to make a horrible clucking noise as they moved lightning quick. One popped up in front of me and tapped my nose. The vines made the creepiest hiss laugh as I felt a tingle run through me. Just then, as suddenly as they attacked, the vines pulled themselves back. I felt a strange wooziness running through my body. What just happened? Rampage asked, and I reached out a hoof to her to steady myself. And just like that, Rampage exploded. The striped mare blew apart in a cloud of shrapnel. Her metal barding smashed into me and sent me flying into one of the tractors, which exploded, showering us with debris. A large chunk of rusty metal fell upon me, and I heaved it away, only to have it explode as well. I staggered to the side, my body battered and my legs wobbling beneath me. I fell, and the ground beneath me exploded like a landmine. I finally just curled up into a ball, feeling battered and broken and terrified to take another step. Then, a glow surrounded me and lifted me into the air. I looked weakly at Lacuna levitating me through the air towards the building. I hate blowing up, I moaned. But then I looked down. P21 and Glory grabbed the regenerating chunks of Rampage and were struggling to keep up as the slithering blue vines pursued them. P21 now tossed incendiary apples every way that he could to try and drive back patches of the noxious blue plant. The ground heaved beneath P21 and he dropped the Philly Rampage in a heap as Lacuna landed on the vine-free concrete steps. She set me down, and the stone exploded under my hooves. At least this time the blast was a little less energetic. I was going to have to chow down on some serious scrap metal soon and start losing legs. Lacuna frowned in concern as she looked at me, then at our friends. She couldn't set me down and get the others without the ground exploding under hoof, but she couldn't manage me and pick them up at the same time either. Suddenly, Rampage screamed as the ground beneath her opened up into a pit of deep earth. Her hooves scrambled at the edge as the hole it was filled with wiggling blue vines and gnarled roots. It was as if the earth itself were creeping away under our hooves to dump her into the depths. P21 reached in and bit her mane, hauling the thrashing, muddy filly back up over the edge. The blue vines darted towards the distracted buck. Green beams sliced the vines into quivering lengths as Glory leapt in place behind him, covering him as he hauled Rampage out. Then I saw it. It was just a moment when she took her eyes off the vines and looked at the pair. In that moment, the vines struck. They shot out and coiled around her. "No!" I screamed, as a blue flash engulfed her body. Then I blinked and stared in shock. "Oh, my," Lacuna murmured in my mind. "What the heck?" "Come on, move!" Glory shouted as she strafed the vines with her Gatling beam gun. But P21 and Rampage gaped at her. "What are you staring at? Move!" Finally, the pair began to run towards us, leaving the vines hissing and rubbing together. Glory turned and shouted, "Oh yeah!" And then she froze. She touched her throat with a bright blue hoof, then turned to stare at the stunned rainbow-colored tail. Where once she had a brand, now she had a vivid rainbow lightning bolt and cloud on her flank. And the killing joke had turned her into Rainbow Dash. What? No. They turned me into a Dashite? A Dashite! No, not a Dash. She said in her higher, squeaker voice. "This is impossible. There must be some kind of mistake." She sat down hard and wailed. "My life is ruined." "Wasn't it already?" Rampage said as she stepped up to the concrete and winced, then said in relief, "Okay, no burying alive. Good." "It's better than blowing up," I murmured weakly. "You don't understand. It would have been better if I'd blown up. You remember how some of the 10-pony ponies acted when they thought that you were related to Twilight? Well, multiply that by 1,000, and that's the Enclave's reaction." Glory began to pace back and forth. "Even if my family could somehow be okay with it, there's no way Thunderhead would. I mean, I look just like her. The most infamous Pegasus in history." "Glory, calm down," I said, taking a step. There was another loud bang that left me sprawling and put a large crack on the concrete. "At least, you're not a walking bomb." "Yeah, you actually look kind of cool like this," Scotch said as she hopped off Lacuna's back. "Not nearly so boring." Rampage looked out at where she'd exploded and sighed. Lacuna flew over to retrieve the new filly's saddlebags. Glory pressed her hooves to the sides of her head. "Oh my gosh, what if the change isn't just physical? What if there's some sort of mental contamination? I was slated for a fast-track medical career. Rainbow Dash was an idiot!" She clenched her eyes closed. Hydrogen, helium, lithium, beryllium, boron, carbon, oxygen. Wait, no, I forgot nitrogen. She gasped. I forgot nitrogen! She grabbed P-21 and shook him in panic. How could I forget nitrogen? Any second I'm going to be obsessed with racing and the Wonderbolts, she cried as she hovered in the air. At least you're flying again, Scotch said with a grin. Lacuna returned with Rampage's blasted bags. The little striped filly dug through them for a moment and pulled out Psycho Shy's power hooves and started to strap them onto her little legs. I'm flying? She looked back over her shoulder at her restored wings. Sure, they were bright blue now, but they were holding her aloft. She grinned. I'm flying! Flying! Woohoo! So awesome! She cheered in glee as she looped and whirled above the steps. Then, suddenly, she got a haunted look and landed. No, Glory, you are an egghead. Egghead! I mean, intellectual! Relax, I think any Pegasus would be glad to get her wings back, I said as I walked gingerly, like I was treading on a bed of landmines, towards the door. Every third step resulted in a sharp detonation under hoof. That knocked me about. Still, I couldn't stop now, I just needed to get inside. Generally, you could tell how important a place was, by how trashed it looked. Hippocampic Research was one reinforced building. I couldn't see a single broken pane of glass or missing tile on the roof. It might have looked like an old, classy style building, but it clearly had been built like a fortress. There was no way I was going to open these doors. P-21, I think we're going to need your... I started to say as I looked back and saw the blue vine snaking out of a crack split in the concrete slab and creeping towards Scotch tape. Look out! I shouted, but all that did was make her look at me. The vine curled around her rear hoof. Scotch immediately shuddered, her eyes clenching shut as Glory severed the tendril with a blast of Sat's assisted gunfire. Burns, she whimpered, and then she fell over as a jet of yellow-green gas sprayed out of her mouth. She started to thrash wildly, a horrible noise coming from her throat as she flopped and fell to her side. And worst of all was the smell. It was a smell that I could smell in my sleep, and it came from me now in horrible freshness. The acrid stench of chlorine. Rainbow Glory fanned her wings to blow the clouds back and landed next to her, pressing near to Scotch Tape's chest. Her rose-colored eyes were wide in fear as more chlorine gas trickled from the filly's lips. Lacuna! The purple alicorn touched Scotch's side with her glowing horn as Glory scrambled for a healing potion. But then she dropped it. No, we don't need more healing now. The joke is making the gas fill her lungs. She grabbed Lacuna. You've got BJ's memories and stuff, right? And still a lot of radiation? The alicorn nodded warily. Teleport us to the Fluttershy Medical Center. The surgical room. Now! Wait! P-21 started. What? Didn't... I started to say. Now! Glory shouted, grabbing Lacuna and shaking her. There was a purple flash, and all three vanished. I sat down, hard in shock. Then there was a bang under my backside, and I leaped to my hooves, looking back at my blackened and frayed tail. P-21 also sat down, with a shocked expression, but without, fortunately, an explosion. I looked blown half to hell, and he looked as if he'd been smacked between the eyes with a plank, and the freshly refolded Rampage was trotting along in power hooves, wearing one saddlebag like a school knapsack. So, all in all, pretty good day in the hoof, huh? The Scotch filly said with a smirk.